everyone. We welcome you to our second Zoom session for 2023. Let us bow in prayer. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you, O God, for this still a new year. Help us to continue through our Zoom sessions to be educated, to be uplifted. And we thank you for each presenter that has presented for the past 2 years. Bless and keep us. And we know that the session tonight, we will leave better than we came in. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I am so used to seeing our presenter across the years at funerals. I'm glad we're in a better session on tonight.
Yes.
The Reverend Joseph Waddy is the Director of Ministries at the St. Peter Baptist Church, a Richmond native. He graduated from Armstrong High School in 1970, licensed and ordained from the First Baptist Church of South Richmond, where Dr. Derek and Dwight Jones are the pastors. He received a bachelor's degree in economics from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, a master's in economics from Virginia Commonwealth University, and a Master of Divinity degree from Virginia Union University. He presented a wonderful session to there were about 200 that day. We had a great class at First Baptist Centralia several weeks ago, and he shall come in his own way. Reverend Waddy, go right ahead.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. I am going to talk a little bit tonight about budgeting. It can be an interesting topic for some. Let me see if I can pull my little presentation up. And okay, let me start this. Okay, I trust that we can see that.
Yes, sir. Looks wonderful, and we can hear you well.
Okay. I'm going to talk about budgeting from the standpoint of personal finance, and I'm going to share with you from my own experience and from my experience in banking and in some other areas that I have worked in. And budgeting and making a budget is really key for managing your money. I think too many times we just get paid and we go to the bank or go where we're going to go, look at our checking account balance and say, oh man, let's go with it. And we just run with it. We don't really think about what we're spending, where our money is going and what we're trying to do with it. I remember a short story when I was at managing a retail bank branch, and a lady came and closed her account, but next thing we know, those checks are still coming in on her account. And so I called her to ask her why she's writing checks. And her response was, well, I know I closed my account, but I still got checks in my checkbook. But having checks in your checkbook doesn't mean you got money. And so having a budget is a good way for managing your money. Some suggest that a budget ought to be a plan for how you handle every dollar that you have. I'm okay with that. I'm not one who's a stickler for budgeting to the penny. I think you can set up a budget that's going to be very helpful, that will allow you to know with a great degree of confidence how much money you have to use, how much you have left after you take care of everything that you need to take care of. And a budget, there's nothing magical about a budget. But if you do one and you do it right and you do it consistently, it will help you have some financial freedom and take some of the stress off of your life. It's amazing how many of us really don't know what we're doing with our money. And if you don't do a budget, if you don't write it down somewhere, you're never going to understand where everything's going. And you're going to wonder why at the end of every paycheck, it seems like you don't have nothing left. And so I will say, as I go along, if you have questions, just let me know, and we'll work that out. There's some takeaways that I hope we will get to as we look at this. And the first of all, as I sort of said earlier, that a budget really is just a plan for managing our income and our expenses over a certain time frame. I usually get my income as it is at the first of the month and at the middle of around the 15th of the middle of the month. And so the budget that I deal with it twice a month. And I wish I kept it over here with me. I just do a little, you can't, I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it. A 2-column journal that I just write down in all of what I have to pay and what my income is, so I know what I'm doing. But I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in a minute. There are different types of budgets, and I'm gonna say something about those too in a little bit. And excuse me, budgets can help you track your spending so that you live within your means. And that's important because many of us really are not living within our means. We're living where we want to be, but we're not living where we are. In other words, our wants sometimes overtake our needs, and we wind up spending much more money than we really do have. And I'm gonna spend some time before we really want to talk about credit cards and how they can be useful, but also how they can be harmful when we get there. And so however you want to do your budget, do it in a way and use a system that's going to work for you. You know, today's time we have applications for budgets. There's stuff online that you can use. A lot of these I think Microsoft has a budget worksheet. A lot of places have these worksheets you can use, but I just say just use whatever is best for you. Now I want to talk a little bit about how you're going to create your little budget. First of all, and this might sound really strange, but first of all, when you need to calculate what your net income is. Don't set your budget up based on your gross income, because you're going to have a gross mess when you do it. Use your net income, because really you don't have your gross income to spend, because they've already taken federal taxes and state taxes and all these other things out of that. So if you're gonna figure your budget on your gross income, then you're gonna wind up in the hole every time, unless you don't spend anything. But figure out where your net income is, and that's easy. From your paycheck, that's your net income. That's what you got in your hand. That's what you got in your bank account, and that's what you can use. But not only look at your salary, but any income that you get on a regular basis for that month or for that time period that you're doing your budget, put that down. If you're getting Social Security, put that down, because you get a Social Security check or deposit. If you happen to have dividends that come in on a regular basis, or you got enough interest on some account that you have that comes in on a regular basis, not every now and then, but on a regular basis. These are sources of income, flows of income that you have that are coming in on a regular basis. We used to say interest would be a good one to put down, but most of us are not getting a whole lot of interest on any of our money these days. They're hardly paying you 1%, if that much, less than 1% on most of our savings accounts, but they charge you 20-some% on 28, 29, 30% even on a charge card, which I've always found that, and I got my own little soapbox about that. I mean, they take your savings money and pay you, say, 0.1% 1% for that, but want to charge you 29% on a credit card, and they're only able to put our credit cards based on the amount of money they can take in terms of deposits, but that's a whole nother story. So calculate your net income. Any questions? Okay.
Reverend
Now,
Joe,
yes, sir.
I've heard some of my friends say they always use their debit card so that they can track their spending. And then I hear people say they do cash or debit card because, you know, sometimes your debit card the numbers can be stolen. How do you feel about paying for some things by debit card, some things by cash, some things by check, or should you try to track it all by debit card?
Well, some people use a debit, some people use a credit card. I would, if you, this is an interesting thing. A lot of us have our debit cards for our checking accounts, and when we go to the store, we scan that debit card, put in our little PIN number, and pay our bill. One little trick that can help you a little bit in terms of safety is when you use your debit card. Most debit cards can also be treated like a credit card. You know, when you go up, you can sometimes they'll ask you debit or credit. If you got an option, choose credit. It's not that it's going to go on your credit card, but it gives you another little layer of safety if you have to dispute a charge. So I don't, but if you're going to use your credit card though to track your spending, I would suggest that you be sure that what you're spending, you're going to be able to pay it off. It is a good tool if you don't want to do a budget. It is a good tool when you get your credit card statement because it will allow you to see what you have been spending your money for. But I wouldn't use it a lot if I'm not going to be able to either pay most of it off or at least 80% of it off every month. Because again, you're going to wind up spending more than you really need to. But when you and I'm going to show you some sample categories and some budget things in a little minute. But when you track your spending, like I said, I do mine in a little ledger book. I write it down, and one thing by writing it down for me is that I know exactly what I'm paying, so I don't miss paying a bill, for example. And so most of my categories every twice the first part of the month and in the middle of the month are pretty much the same. The bills that I'm paying, especially with credit card, might be different, but it allows me to see where the bulk of my spending is going. And it helps me to do the third step is to set some realistic goals about what it is you want to do with your money. You can't set a goal for what you want if you don't really know what it is you're doing with your money now. And when in terms of setting goals, remember in all of this budgeting, everything that we do, it needs to be some flexibility, but you need to try to stick to your budget as best you can, because so I recommend if you're going setting goals now can be something like how much money you want to save within a certain time. It can be in which of your credit cards you may want to pay down over a particular time, how much money you want to save for yourself. I mean, and it comes to making a plan. You got to look at what you're actually spending and also look at what you want to spend, and be realistic about what it is you're doing. And at this point, though, I need to also say that we need to understand the difference between a need and a want. A need and a want. For example, we might need a TV, but do you really need a 75-inch TV? We need, and I'm not saying don't buy the TV. I'm just saying we mess up sometimes because we forget that there's a difference between what I need and what I want. And what I want is going to make you spend money that you don't have. All right. All right. Any questions? All right. And so once you get your plan together, once you've done your budget, and I'm going to show you something in a minute, then you need to constantly meeting whenever you get paid and you got to write bills, take care of all of that stuff. You really need to look at what you're spending. Try to stay on your budget, but really look at what you spend. You'd be surprised, for example, how much miscellaneous money we spend during the week buying coffee, buying, going to Starbucks because you want a latte instead of just getting a regular cup of coffee. You'd be surprised how much money we spend and don't even think about it in doing that. And so we need to review our budget regularly. Now, how to stick to this budget that we're gonna do. Like I said, track your expenses regularly. Keep an eye on what you're spending. And God knows sometimes if you're just going to do strictly cash, you can wind up spending your cash. It can go so fast. You can have $100 in your pocket on Monday, and by Tuesday evening, you ain't got but 75 cents and wonder what happened to it. But if you think you're going to overspend by using your credit card and your debit card, pay cash. And see, cash can be a deterrent because it would help us stay within our wants and not our needs and not our wants. Because if you got to pay a big cash for a big item, you're going to think twice, most people will, about what we're trying to do. Check in on your budget weekly, and like I said, review your. Now, nobody I know income changes that regularly, so it's your expenses that you're going to need to work on. Some types of budgets, and I know I'm rushing through some things, so stop me if I'm going too fast. But people have what they call a zero-based budgeting. Now, this is for the person who is really, 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 really detail-oriented. I mean, this is where you budget your income down to the last dollar. Now, I can't do that. I mean, I know I get close enough, but I can't account for every penny. But if you got that kind of a detailed personality, go for it. Some people laugh at that second one, the cash envelope budgeting. That's something grandma used to do. And sometimes if your mother's older, if your mother might have done it, and your father and grandpa and all of them, where they get an envelope, where they get envelopes, and they got one for food, they got one for the rent, they got one for the car payment, they got one for life insurance, whatever their expenses are, they got an envelope for it, and it's written on the front, food, housing, gasoline. And they put a certain amount of money in each one of those envelopes. And when it comes time to take care of that, they just get the cash out of it and pay for that budget category. The good one, I guess, it's a kind of tedious process, but the good thing about that process is that you can't spend, once you take that money out of that envelope for food, for example, and you spend it, you can't go back in there and get nothing else because there ain't nothing else to get. So that'll definitely keep you on your budget. You just got to know how much to put in there. And this last one is sort of a relatively new thing, where they look at what's called percentage-based budgeting. And what they call that is the 50-30-20 rule. And what that says is you allow up to 50% of your income for what you need. Things like you got to pay the mortgage, you got to pay the car payment, you got to pay for your utilities, you got to pay for your insurance, the things that you got to pay for. You got to pay on your credit card and all of those things. So no more than you do 50% of your spendable income now, not your gross, your spendable income for those needs, 30% then for what the things you want, like entertainment, eating out, special gifts, clothes, shopping, and all, beyond what the basic clothes that you need for working and living. And then commit 20% of your income to savings and debt payments. I think you can either this at that 20%, you can do one or two things. You can, and I haven't said it yet, but I'm gonna talk about it, is that we need to, first of all, what I do on my list of expenses every twice a month, the first line item is my tithe. That's my first line item. And I know what my tithe is because I know what my income is for that period of time. For me, I get most of mine at the first of the month and the rest of it at the middle of the month. The first of the month is a little bit more. So my tithe at the first of the month is more. But the first item is what I give to the church. And once I figure out what that amount is, that doesn't change. That's the only item on my budget that I don't adjust. It always stays what it's supposed to be. If I got to adjust anything, I'm going to adjust some of the other stuff that I do, but I don't adjust my tithe, my gift to the church. Any questions?
Reverend Waddy.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. Thad Jones here. My mother is 83, and like most seniors, with nothing much to do, she loved to spend money, and and I monitor it because I'm her POA, and I like this cash envelopes budgeted. Maybe that'll slow her down from far as spending at the Goodwill store and others. So, do you think, how would I approach her? She's my mother, as far as, hey, Mom, I think we should maybe try this. What type of approach should I use as her, as her son?
Okay.
Not to be too harsh. But,
yeah. You said she's 83. All right. She may have seen her parents or somebody she knows using envelopes like that. You could probably start it maybe by having a conversation that you want her to be a little more active in understanding what she's spending, and so to help you and to help her, that you want to introduce this envelope system and sit down with and talk, and just whatever items you need, whatever you need to put on the envelope for, just say this, for example, food, in terms of eating out, tell her that, okay, we're gonna write on this envelope, this is entertainment, and we're gonna put X number of dollars in here. So if you want to go out to dinner one time, this is where we're gonna take it from. Just introduce it as a way of having her actively participate in her own expenditures. And you try it, do a couple of envelopes, especially something that if she likes shopping, this right on it, shopping, and say, okay, now, Mom, this is how much we're gonna put aside for you to go shopping at the Goodwill, and agree on a little amount, put it in, and then when she spends that and come back and looking at the envelope and nothing's in it, and well, hey, we can't spend anything else. And maybe, just gently try it that way and see, because she may be familiar with it, and just see. Anyone else?
I don't know if you're looking for additional support in terms of written, but there is a gentleman named Dave Ramsey, and he has this book called The Total Money Makeover. And it's more about getting out of debt, and he does encourage this envelope system. So again, maybe Thad, if Mom likes reading, if you're looking for something in a book that supports this system, that's just something else.
Yep. All right. Let's see what I got here. Oh, let's look at some sample budget categories. Now, you don't have to have all of these categories in your budget. My budget, like I say, what I do, I start out with my tithe, and then I list the things that I need to pay. Luckily for me right now in my stage of life, I don't have a mortgage to worry about. But you know, list things like actually I write down I'm writing down the companies or the bills that I have to pay. You know, like the utilities, taxes, the electric company, all these other people like that. But to start your budget, you got to know what your spendable income is. So again, what I do, I take my net income, whatever salaries, interest, dividends, whatever you got, whatever your flow of income is, I take my tithe off of that. And I talked to you earlier about doing things on gross. The tithe is the one thing, that the only thing in my budget that I figure out on my gross income. Because Caesar already got his, but I need to make sure God get his too out of my first fruit. So my tithe is figured out on my gross. But anyhow, I take the one net income I got, cash in my bank, cash in my hand, and take my tithe out of that. And that tells me what I got left to spend. And one of the things I want to say about tithing or any giving that we do, especially the giving that we do for God, our problem with being able to give what we feel that God was requiring us to give is because we don't manage the 90% that we have left. If you give a 10% tithe, it is responsibility of ours to manage the 90% that we have left. But most of us spend like we got 110%. And so it's hard work now to get from overspending to get to where we need to be. I'm not going to say that it's easy for all of us. Expenses, got it listed here, your housing. You got mortgage or rent, you got to pay either renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. Their electricity and other utilities. You got, if you own a house, there's maintenance. You got to worry about, you certainly need food. And the price of food has gone up. If you got an automobile or two, you got payments, you got gas. All of those things you see listed in insurance, taxes, maintenance again. And then if you got life insurance other than your work, you know, if you got somebody's Progressive, State Farm, whoever you got, you might have life insurance, excuse me, medical insurance, other things in here. And then we list our debts. And most of the things we have on our list are dealing with credit cards. But credit cards, any other personal loans you might have, any other debts that we got, clothing, savings. And if you got children, you got school, childcare, tuition, all of that stuff you got to pay for. Investments, if you have any, and I think everybody should plan in their budget for investments. And then miscellaneous stuff. And see, this is the miscellaneous stuff is where we get messed up, because nobody thinks about how much cologne we buy, the kind of cosmetics we spend our money on. I ain't got nothing against Mary Kay and nobody, but cosmetics, beauty, the barber, laundry, cleaning, any allowances and lunches for us, not just for the kids, but for us, subscriptions we have, excuse me, and any cash money we trying to spend. And so we come up with our total expenses. And now that you know what you need to spend, what you're spending, compare it to your income. And either you're going to have a smiley face because you got some money left, or your face going to be all crunched up, excuse me, because you're in a deficit. And we don't want a deficit. We do not want deficit. Okay. So before I go into credit card tips, anything you want to talk about in terms of planning on budget and how do we get to where we need to be? Anybody, comments? Okay. The other thing I want to say about before we talk about credit cards, because I mentioned a little bit about the need to do investments. And I think it's important. You don't need a stockbroker. You don't need to spend a ton of money paying nobody commissions to buy stock. But it's very easy ways to get involved in investing and helping your money to work for you. Something as easy as everybody has to get electricity. Am I right? Everybody got lights. Everybody needs power in their house. You can become a stockholder of in Dominion Resources real easy. You call down to their share or go online to their shareholder department, sign up to buy some stock, some Dominion stock. You can spend as little as $25 a month, $25 every time you get paid. You send it to your account at Dominion and ask that your dividends that you would get on any stock that you buy, ask that they would be reinvested in purchasing more stock. While the stock price is obviously more than $25, if you do this on a regular, consistent basis and let your dividends be reinvested, you will be surprised after a few years how much money you have invested in Dominion Resources. And when that truck goes by, you can probably say, I own part of that company. You can do the same. Everybody got cell phones. You can do the same thing with Verizon. You can spend $15 a week or $15 a month, and as it accumulates, you can buy stock. All I'm trying to say is, rather than spend all of our money, we need to find ways that we can creatively invest, even if it's a small investment, so we can start getting some other sources of income other than depending on our salary. I hope that makes sense to you. But I think there's some great, and I'm not an investment advisor, so I can't advise you on what to get. But I just look at the stuff that I use. People buying sneakers, paying $300 and $400 for a pair of Nike sneakers. Why can't you own a 10 or 20 shares of Nike yourself and get some dividend? But that's a whole nother story. Let me see. I got a little more time left, I think. Credit cards. Let's talk about credit cards, because credit cards can either work for us or they can work against us. Somebody got something in the chat. Let me see here. Oh, okay. Thank you. Credit card tips. First of all, my suggestion is, and I know most of us can't do this, but we should work towards being able to do this. I would advise paying off your credit card balance every month, or at least making more than the minimum payment. Because if you make just the minimum payment, you are going to be paying off that little $3,000 or $4,000 for a long time. A long time. You know, and you know, sometimes we can't do more than the minimum payment. But if we can try, because if we paying off our balance every month, it also implies that we're paying closer attention to what we're spending our money on. And so, you know, I say pay it off. Now some credit cards, will, and you got to kind of know the vendor that you're working with. I had a gasoline card one time with well, it was Amoco, and then it became BP, and I hope I don't get in trouble by mentioning their name. But I paid my gas card off every month. I used it because I didn't want to spend my cash all during the month on gas. So I would buy the gas, bill come, I pay it off. But after a while, they decided they wanted to close my account. And I found that the reason they did it was because I wasn't giving them any interest every month. So, depending on the car, and then if you want to keep the brand, you might want to, pay everything except maybe $10 a month or something. But I would recommend paying off your balance every month. It helps your credit score too. Second credit card tip I would give you is to use the card for what you need and not for what you want. And that's a difficult thing for many of us to do because we're into instant gratification. The heart wants what the heart wants. And when the heart wants it, we're going to pay for it if we got the credit card. Again, I picked on the TV. You need a TV, a nice, I don't know, 45-inch one is probably just as good in terms of your need of a TV. You need to watch the shows, but do you need to watch it on a 75-inch TV screen? I'll never forget, I went to visit someone one time for as Pastor Brown talking about a funeral, to help them arrange a funeral. And I went into their living room, was extremely small, but it had this huge TV on the wall. I mean, it was so big that anywhere you sat in that living room, it was almost like you couldn't see the TV because it was so big. And I'm not, I'm not trying to talk about anybody's spending habits and what people want and what people like. I just say that credit cards should generally be used in a way that if you get something that, like I said, you can pay it off. But I would generally consider them something that we need to use sparingly and that we need to use, especially in an emergency. I mean, if you got your car need to be repaired and you don't have the $600 at the moment, put it on your credit card. But also when you put it on the credit card, put it on there with the mindset that within the next 4 months, I'm going to pay it off, or 5 months or 6 months, however, you want to do. The other thing is never skip a payment on your credit card. Don't skip the payment. Pay your bill, even if the minimum payment is all you can afford, because not only will it have a negative impact on your credit score, but then you got all these late fees and you got all of this penalty interest and all of this other kind of stuff. And like with any bill, with any debt, if you can't pay it, call the creditor and let them know. Call them and let them know, because many of them can help make arrangements so that they can do the kinds of things to defer interest and other things so that your credit won't get messed up and it won't look like you're not trying to pay your bill. Brother Brown, Pastor Brown asked about this credit card as a budgeting tool. That can work if you're one who is able to have some restraint and really use that card as a way of knowing what it is you're spending. I know several people, younger people who use the credit card in that way, and they do it and they treat it like it's an American Express card. Although American Express cards now, they'll let you pay over time. But when in the old American Express, if you charge something on it, you had to pay it off. And so if you can pay it off, or at least pay the majority of it off, it's nothing wrong with using it as a budgeting tool. I would suggest that if you're gonna use your credit card on a regular basis, and you're going to be spending anywhere from $3,000 plus a year on your credit card, then use a rewards card as opposed to a regular credit card. Because if you're going to use it like that, you may as well get some rewards, some cash back and other kinds of rewards for using your credit card if you're going to use it that regularly. If you don't use your card that regularly, I wouldn't worry about getting a rewards card. And then try to stay, as a good rule, and this is what most credit unions look at too. They don't just look at the amount of credit limit that you have, but they look at how you use that limit. And I would suggest that you try to stay under 30% of your total credit union, your total credit limit each month. For example, if you have $1,000 limit on your credit card, then try to keep your expenditure, your balance under $300. So whatever your credit limit is on your particular card, try to keep that balance. If you got to use it, keep that balance under 30% of your limit. And that way, when you're doing it, your total credit card, look at the total credit card payments and usage that you have, and try to keep that under 30%. And so we got a few minutes. I don't know if I have anything else I want to hit. No, we got a few minutes, and I would just want to answer any questions that you might have about all this stuff, because I've said a lot, and so if you have any specifics that you want to answer, then we have some time, but we can do that now.
Is a bank better or a credit union, or is it the same thing?
It's pretty much the same thing. I think sometimes in this environment, today's environments, a credit union would tend to pay you a little bit better interest on your savings account. But if as long as they're all insured by a federal agency. And credit unions, I'm with a credit union instead of a bank. I'm with a credit union. Credit unions tend to be more, in my estimation, now this is just me, tend to be a little bit more customer friendly, because the customer is now you're a member as opposed to just another customer. And so that, I find that environment works a little bit better for me. Okay. Oh, emergency saving. Okay, somebody mentioned it. I definitely suggest that as a part of your budget, that you do that. That you would every time you get paid, that you would set aside something in an account, in an emergency account, and just use that account only for emergencies. Those of you who homeowners know emergencies pop up all the time. And even car repairs, something unexpected, you go get it inspected and something unexpected come up. So I would, there are a lot of ways to do it. If you want to think about the tithe, then try to save 10%. The other problem that we have in this country is that in the savings rate, the savings level in the United States every year has dropped. We save very little, we spend a lot. And especially in the African American community, we really don't save. And I know with most savings accounts now, you can't get a lot of interest, but you need to find a way to save and have an emergency account somewhere. How much you should put away really depends on your own personal situation. But I was trying to suggest that you would try to get to at least 5% of your spendable income over the course of a year. Figure out what that is and make that your goal to save, to have that much money saved by the end of the year.
You mentioned this before, but could you elaborate a little more on a percentage-based budgeting?
No, okay, yeah, that's the new way a lot of people want to do it. 50% of your budget would be on things like it's like the automobile, your car payments, because you have to have transportation in this environment to get by anywhere, to even the shop. So if you got transportation, the basic things that you need, that you gotta have to exist, you gotta have to survive. You gotta pay your utilities. You gotta pay your mortgage and your rent. You gotta pay insurances and stuff like that. That amount, 50% of whatever you're spending money should go to those kind of things. You gotta have, if you got a child, you gotta have child care, which can be very expensive. But then again, this wants thing. I want to go on vacation, but do I need to really go to Disney World or Universal down in Orlando? Do I need Universal Studios? Do I really need to go there, or can I just go down to Virginia Beach? Again, we want a lot of things. I mean, in terms of food, I mean, can I make it off of eating a hamburger, or do I have to have a steak? I mean, they sound like simple decisions, but all that stuff costs money. And so we have to learn how to figure out what it is we really need. And then so that's 50% of the budget. And then the 30% is for the things like eating out. You want to eat out sometimes, you gotta put some of that money away, and don't just always defer to the charge card. I hope that helps some, but any other questions or comments, or anything I didn't touch on that you want me to mention or say something about?
Are you in a position to talk about the importance of the credit score?
Credit scores are that's the lifeblood. That's the lifeblood right there. Because some people think it's hard to get an 800 or plus credit score, but it's not. You just got to be meticulous in handling what you have and learn how to live within the budget and don't have too much credit card usage. You got to have some, believe it or not, in this environment, you got to have some credit cards, because most of the credit unions look at you strange. Not credit union, but credit bureaus look at you strange, and your score would be affected if you don't have any credit at all. Believe it or not, some people I know just like to use cash for everything. That's good in one way, but it does not get you a good credit score, because the credit bureaus are looking at how you handle credit. Is why it's a credit bureau. And so the higher your credit rating is, well, let me put it this way, it gives you the advantage. One advantage is that when you go to apply for an auto loan, for example, if you have a credit rating, credit score that's above 700, for example, or in many cases, they're looking for like 750. If you have a score of 700 or 750, your loan rate is going to be cheaper than if you have a credit score of 650. And so that score opens up the door for you to get prime kinds of lending. Some car companies, for example, will give you an extra discount on a car if your credit score is high. In addition to getting the preferred rate, and you know that on larger loans, if you can get a rate of, say, and I'm just picking a number, if you get a rate of 5.1%, it's a whole lot better than getting one of 6.1. You're paying a whole lot more money. And so the higher your credit score, you can get a lower rate on your loans and things like that. That makes it, and credit card companies will come looking for you because they're gonna want you to use their credit card because you got such a great score. But credit scores are very important, and one of the best ways to obviously raise it, and don't do that boosting stuff and all of that crazy thing. The best way to raise it is obviously is to pay down your debt and work out a plan to pay down your debt. If, for example, if you need to use a credit card to buy some new tires, so you need some Michelin tires for your car so that it can get inspected. If you use a credit card, have in your plan that I'm going to pay that off in 4 months, or don't just get it and keep making the minimum payments. Because not only can you get better rates, but with a good credit score, another credit tip. Most places, even on car loans, if you budget correctly and you have enough disposable money left at the end of your pay, if your car payment says, I don't know, say it's $350 a month, pay your car payment on time. But if you have an extra $50, send that $50 to your car credit company and ask them to apply that to your principal. That way, you're reducing your principal faster, so you're really lowering the amount of interest that you're going to pay over the term of the loan even more. So be creative about how you do this. But the credit score is extremely important. And too many of us have such low credit scores that we're paying more in terms of interest than we ought to be paying. And that's how the system works. The ones who can least afford to pay it, which is why maybe our credit score is lower in the first place. We can't afford to pay it, but we got to pay it if we're going to get what we need to have. All righty. Again, we got a little more time left. Anything else I can help with?
Any more questions for the chat room, or you may unmute? I guess one of the things I really want to say too about budgeting is that look at budgeting as a way to help you be a better steward, to help you know where your money is going to the best as you can. And if you budget right and you start paying down some of the things that are weighing down on you, and you pick a specific time period in which to do all of this, you'll be surprised how much money you save yourself by getting rid of some of this stuff. And at the end of the day, it makes for a much less stressful day because you don't have to worry about robbing Peter to pay Paul and all that other stuff. But you have not only paid down your debts, but as a part of the planning process, you've also done some good things for yourself. All right. Reverend, we thank you so much for your time this evening. Oh, sure. Thank you so much. And everyone have a good evening. You may unmute and fellowship as you zoom out, as you leave the room.